Now, Ableton's Analog is definitely one of the best software solutions for learning how synthesizers work. But you're always hearing people talking about it sounding a little bit thin. Like, as one of my friends once poetically put it, the presets just sound a little bit preset-y. But just by running it through Saturn 2 by Fabfilter, you can get some really beefy, fat, more analog sounding results really quickly and really easily. What's up people, Craig Lopez back once again with another tutorialism, and today we're going to be looking at how we can make Ableton's Analog sound a bit more analog. Now, Ableton's Analog is called what it is because it has all of the basic controls of a typical in real life analog synth, but the sounds it creates are very much digital, and while that's not necessarily a bad thing, most people will either run it through some expansive and complex effects chain, or just go out and buy a chunkier sounding soft synth to get that coveted analog sound. But today we're going to be looking at how you can analog your analog just by using Saturn 2 by Fabfilter. So Saturn 2 is a distortion plugin, and of course distortion is not the only thing that makes an analog synth sound analog, but it definitely plays a big part. So I'm not going to do a full walkthrough on how this thing works, as I'm sure there's going to be an awesome one by Dan Worrell up at some point, and I'm not going to enter some discussion about how a digital plugin can never sound truly analog, as there's also plenty of those videos up talking about that already. I'm just simply going to run analog through Saturn and have a bit of fun. So let's start with a sine wave, also known as a pure tone. And let's play the most pure melody known to man. Now let's add a little something that I made earlier in Saturn, just to familiarize myself with the controls. And straight away we get the sound of an analog synth that has been dropped down the stairs and left in a cupboard for 25 years. So the best way to work out how a new plugin works, aside from reading the manual, is to load up a preset. So I put this simple patch together in analog. Not very interesting. But just by adding this preset, Lush Synced Detune BM, instantly more interesting. Now, a lot of what give a real analog synth its character are the constant variances of the circuits as they heat up and cool down and age over time, which affects the electronic signal that passes through them, which creates the sound. What we can do with Saturn 2 to mimic that is create modulations within the distortion, which we can see here with these mod sources affecting these parameters. What I also love about this preset here are these sliders, which are macros controls which you can use to assign to just about any control within the plugin, pretty much the same way you do with macros in the racks in Ableton. You can see what they've been assigned to by clicking on this little green button above them. Okay, so let's have a look at what I did with this simple bass patch. This is the sound without the plugin. And this is the same sound with Saturn 2 on it. So let's have a look at what I did here. So I've split the signal into 3 bands. Let's solo the low band. So you can see exactly what you have on each band by clicking on these dots here. So we can see I have the macros slider, which I have labeled low pulse, and we have XLFO2, which I've got mapped to EQ band mid 1. We can see it moving up and down here. And I'm using the macros to control how much of the LFO is controlling my low band. Let's have a listen to that. So if I select my midband, we can see that I have XLFO1, which is this, controlling the drive of the distortion. And let's have a listen to that. So very subtle on the midband there. And on my high band, I've got XLFO3, which is controlling the output pan. And I've also got a macro slider, which is controlling the output level. So let's have a listen to that. So let's see what we can do with a pad and a completely new instance of Saturn. So this is the sound I'm going to be working with without any distortion on. Let's turn the plugin on. Okay, so we have a mix dial, feedback dial. We have a frequency for the feedback. We have a dynamics control. If we switch it to the left, we have an expander, and if we go to the right, we have compression. We have our drive dial. And we can pan the drive. We have simple EQ and overall level and pan. Here we have our presets, or our distortion types rather. Clicking on add source lets us add modulation devices. So we have slider or macro controls, XY controls, LFOs, envelope generator, envelope follower, and we can control it by MIDI. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do is duplicate this pad a few times. So I'm going to use the first one as a reference so we can hear the before and after. So I've got 4 notes in my chord. So this first pad, I'm just going to delete every note apart from the top one. And then I'm going to delete every note apart from the second, then the third, and then the bass note. Let's label them so I know where I'm at. And let's group them together. Now the reason I want to do this is to mimic what we would have had to do back in the day if we had a mono synth and we wanted to play a chord on that mono synth. Now obviously a mono synth can only play one note at a time. So if we wanted to play a chord, we would have to buy multiple instances of that synth and send a different note to each instance of the synth. Now, because of the way an analog synth works, each synth would have a slightly different character and a slightly different tone. And that is what I'm trying to emulate here. So let's have a listen to that. So of course I'm just scratching the surface of what is possible with Saturn 2, but I am going to be bold and say this is one of those rarest of plugins that to me is just a must-have, especially if you're working completely in the box as I am. Now I never actually tried Saturn 1, so I wasn't really sure what to expect when I downloaded this demo, but I think what surprised me the most is just how fun this thing is to use. But you know, don't take my word for it. Download the demo yourself, have a play about with it, see what you think. I'll leave a link in the description below as to where you can download it from. Right, so if you made it this far through the video, then I guess you liked it, so subscribe if you want to see more. Thumbs up and comments on the video really help the channel out, but I guess you already knew that. Anyway, that's it for now. This has been Tutorialism. I've been Craig Lopez. Peace.